Hi, welcome to a Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I will give a little bit more details and explanations about setting relationships between records. In the Cumulus client, you can, in a catalog, define relations between records. And these relations can be found in the catalog settings under asset relations. By default, these are the type of relations that exist and that can be used and can be set. But you can add any number of relations. So that's very easy, and a relation then gets identified by Cumulus by its unique UID or ID. This ID is something that we will need in the workflow to determine what the relationship is. If I go to imagine that you have a workflow that needs to process newly cataloged records, for instance, and these newly cataloged records need to search for their master or search for their slave. So imagine that I am cataloging here some files automatically or manually, it doesn't matter. And so I have here, for instance, a master file and two slave files. So imagine that these files are being cataloged. And there is a naming convention, for instance, that the relation between the records is the first four characters is a product ID. And maybe the master image has in the name like in this example, underscore R01. So whatever is necessary, it can be field values, it can be all types of logic behind it, but let's stick to that logic for this example. So in the workflow, I'm looking in the specific catalog and I'm looking for anything created in the past hour. This is a very broad or crude way of processing it. You could also do that more refined by defining a trigger in the Cumulus catalog that defines that whenever a record is cataloged, that it performs, saves a trigger file for Roboflow, and then Roboflow can watch these trigger files. But to keep it simple, I'm just doing a Cumulus query, looking for the records cataloged in the past hour. Then I'm defining what relation to set. There is a hard-coded UID asset relation is alternate or is variant, and those two are hard-coded into Roboflow as it recognizes this text, and you will see that in the instruction of in a few moments. But you could just, as I showed you in the Cumulus client, go to here and create a new relation or hard code this and say, okay, I want this. What I'm doing here is I'm doing Control-C, and then I'm going to a text editor and do Control-V. And you see this is the UID that you need to use. So I can just pick this up, and instead of having the hard-coded placeholder, I can just do this. And so let's do this for this example. It's a relation, and maybe you can say in the comment, in the comment that this is an alternate. And so that way we know that we're setting the alternate relation. Then I have to evaluate, I have to check my master, check if this is a master record, in which case I have to look for slaves, or is this a slave record, in which case I have to find my master. So I define a query to find my slaves and a query to find my master. And so the query is that the asset name contains underscore R01 dot, and that was our convention. And I'm also saying that the record name needs to start with the first four characters of the asset name. And so the asset name field, and actually it's a little bit confusing. This can or should also be asset name. Doesn't matter, record name and asset name are usually the same, but anyway, to keep it a little bit consistent, I'm putting in the field name. They have to be searchable, of course, contain search, etc., etc. Normal Cumulus functionalities. You can build these queries inside the Cumulus client in the advanced window, where you can find the syntax of these queries here. That's where you can build them, test them, and then put them into Cumulus. There's a little inline scripting placeholder here, which is this section, and this section is actually picking up the record field asset name, and then it says I need a substring of that being from the zero, from the first character to 4 characters long, and so that's what this instruction is doing. And same here, but here it says that it needs to contain the underscore R01 dot. So that's how it finds the master. As I said, it can be any type of field you're looking for in your Cumulus catalog that defines the relationship. And then finally, how do I determine which query to use? Well, I'm going to pick up a value from the record, and in this case I'm saying record name, and again this is maybe nicer to have here asset name if we're going to query the asset name later. And then I'm saying this is the field that will be evaluated for each record, and then I'm specifying a regular expression. If you don't know regular expressions, just look it up, Java regular expression. It's a way of evaluating text, and I'm saying here dot star, meaning dot is any character, a star means any number of times, so any file that has some characters, then an underscore R01, and then it needs a dot, but you cannot just put the dot because it has a special meaning, so that's it. That's why it is what we call is escape, so it's backslash. So backslash dot means now here's the real dot character, and then I put dot star again to say any number of characters can follow. So I'm saying that any file that contains underscore R01 dot is a master. In the asset name, which I pick up the value here, is a master. So that's how this workflow works. I'm not going to show you the details yet. Let's see it at work. So in the catalog, we have here this the master and this are the slaves. If I click on it at this point, it's not showing any relationships because I haven't set them yet. So when I now run the script, I say start. And I can do show log. So what happens is it finds a record, which is this one, and it says, okay, I need to find the slave record. So it has determined that it is a master. So it looks for any asset name that does not contain this one and starts with 1, 2, 3. And the 1, 2, 3 was the calculated value from this record. It picks this up from here. And then it finds 2 records. So it says, okay, I'm a master. I find 2 slaves. So it sets the slave relationship to them. And so the smiley clown and the smiley smile, both of these records also start with 1, 2, 3 and do not have this in their file name, so they are their slaves. Then it goes on because now coincidentally we cataloged also the slaves within the same hour, so it finds them as well. So here it does the other way around. It says now I need to find the master. As I said, if this is cataloged separately, then it won't process this again because the relation is set, so there's no need. But here's just to be able to show you both directions. I'm finding the master query, so the master query will be this. Now I'm looking for the master, so it needs to contain the underscore R01. It says, okay, I find 1 master record, and then it's processing that master record and it's setting the relationship. In this case, of course, it's now setting the is master relation, while in the others here it's setting the is slave relation. And again, for the second slave record, it does that again, and it finds a master again. So if we have a look in the Cumulus catalog, you can see that if I click here, it's if I say the preferred alternate, or other words, the master, then for these slaves, there is a preferred alternate. Of course, this is the preferred alternate. So, and this is not a problem. So here, I can see that if I change this to alternate, that now suddenly these are my alternates. And here too, this is all alternates, and so these are all alternates. So also the master is showing up, and so as you know, with an alternate, the master is contained in the group, so it allows you to show the all masters. While if you set a different type of a relation, like a variant, then the master and the slaves are very separated, and so then the slave and the master are not shown in one list here as a relationship. But that has nothing to do with the relationship. That is the visual interpretation or the filter that has been defined in your client. And the relation is always set up the same way. It's a type of relation that you set, and it's always between two records, a master and a slave. So that's how the workflow physically works. Let's see how this looks in the action script. Well, in the action script, first of all, I'm opening the catalog, so I don't have to reopen it again. Why am I opening a catalog? Well, this workflow has a catalog, this production, but in this catalog is already processing these records, so I cannot do an additional search in it, because otherwise it might lose its context for the other records. So that's why I open this second catalog a second time, to be able to do my individual searches in it. Then in the next steps, you can see that the values here, I'm picking up the record ID of this one, and I'm processing, calculating the value. So I'm picking up the value from this isMaster value field. So in this case, it's picking up the asset name. So this check value will contain the asset name. And then I'm evaluating my regular expression that we defined in the parameters against that asset name. If it is a master, then it will proceed and it will pick up the slave query. It will output it. It will do a find. The result is a number of records, an integer, say 5 records, for instance, and then you're processing them. Each record processed in here will be called a slave, and I'm outputting this to the log file. And so normally you don't need to do the process, because the set related can also work on a query, and you could just put this query in here. But I prefer to see individually which record it is assigning, so that's why I'm doing it this way. That's why in this query to find the related record, I'm not putting that query, but I'm putting the record ID. So I'm saying that the record ID of this slave record needs to be equals the ID, and so it's actually looking for this slave record's ID, and then assigning the relation. The relation in this case is set slave record, and then else find records. If it is a slave, it's looking for the master, and then it's outputting how many masters, and then it's processing the master records. The master record, it's setting the master record relationship, and it says set master. It's picking up the relation, and here is where I was telling you that there is a predefined, and so it recognizes these two predefined constants, but all the rest of the relationships you have to put the actual UID. So as we just did in the example, you just pick it up from the catalog and you specify that particular relationship there. And then when this is assigned, you should not forget to close, of course, that catalog. Okay, so this is how this workflow works. It finds records to process for some reason, which is in this case a new record. Could just be somebody filled in an article number, and now we need to find all the other records with the same article number, and then we can determine if this is a master or a slave, and then you're setting the relationship. And so all kinds of logics are possible. So thank you for joining this training movie, and see you in the next one.